Perfect. Yep. Right. I'm
Yes,
good.
sir.
What's up, Dolphins fans? It is draft week, and the Miami Dolphins' first selection is on Friday night, pick number 51 of the second round. Now, the Dolphins' offseason work to this point, it's given them the luxury of selecting the so-called BPA, best player available, as opposed to drafting for need. Now, having said that, we're going to talk about what positions make the most sense to address in the second round, third round, and free agency / trade. By the way, I'm Chris Perkins, your Dolphins columnist for the Sun Sentinel. That's David Furones, your Dolphins writer for the Sun Sentinel. Another thing we're going to be talking about here on Dolphins Deep Dive. Last week, we heard from quarterback Tua Tagovailoa saying that he briefly thought about retiring due to concussions, even had conversations with his family about the topic. And Furones, what we're going to talk about is sometimes we hear people say once an athlete has entertained retirement, he's already there mentally. And so is there reason for the Dolphins to worry about Tua's mindset if he gets another concussion? And also, one thing that we didn't ask Tua about, and maybe it wasn't the time when he was speaking last week, is we get back to this thing about the quarterback scramble and the quarterback sneak. And strategy-wise, are these off the table because of his concussion issue? And if they are off the table, what does that do to the offense? Does it make you more predictable? Does it make you easier to defend? Finally, the big story from yesterday, the Aaron Rodgers trade. He is with the Jets, or he will be once he passes the physical. But we're going to talk about where the Dolphins are in the AFC and the AFC East. And we're going to talk about whether they can gain any ground with additions this week in the draft or additions after the draft. Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, is because the Dolphins right now, they aren't necessarily looking for a starter in the draft this week. Now, the Dolphins, as you've written and we've all known, they don't have a first-round pick on Thursday, the night that the draft starts, Thursday at 8 p.m. Their first pick is on Friday. They've got their backup quarterback, Mike White. They've got their slot receiver, Braxton Berrios. They've got their inside linebacker at David Wilson Jr. So I like what they've done to this point. I would like to see a running back upgrade. I would have liked to have seen a veteran backup quarterback. Those are the reasons I'm giving them a B as opposed to a B plus or an A, but that's my personal stuff. What do you think about their offseason at this point and how it affects their strategy going into the draft, Furones?
Well, I'll go B plus, maybe even A minus a little bit, maybe, and maybe they go in the draft. Like my mock draft had Jahmyr Gibbs. It might be tough to see it actually developing that way, but you never know with running backs. So, yeah, a lot of optimism with how this offseason has come about, even if the Dolphins don't have that first-round pick for, obviously, the tampering violations pursuing Tom Brady and Sean Payton.
Yeah, and what makes the most sense to you for the Dolphins in the draft? You had Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back from Alabama. I've had Sam Laporta, and really, again, the Dolphins don't have to draft for need right here. To me, they do need a receiving tight end. They do need an addition to the backfield, to the offensive backfield, but really, they could go any way because, yes, you do still have this Byron Jones money, and you do have this round of free agency after the draft and after June 1st. So I think they've put themselves in a really good position. I would probably go tight end in the second round, but look, if they don't, the bottom line here is there are a lot of ways to improve this team. You could kind of roll into the regular season, roll into training camp with the team that you have, and you probably wouldn't be any worse than last year. Would there be actually? You'd probably be about a game better. I would say maybe a game better, and that's because we don't know about the health. But the addition of Fangio and Jalen Ramsey and some of the defenses, it should be better. But you've got, okay, Austin Jackson opens camp at right tackle. That's not the end of the world. He might win the job. Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg at left guard. Again, not the end of the world. These are guys who belong in the NFL. It wouldn't be like you're playing guys that are going to be out of the league in a year. So you could be better at some of these positions, but I think they're in decent shape. Would you agree with that?
Sure. You say a game better. I would say even it could be multiple games better, assuming Tua Tagovailoa's health. If Tua stays healthy, then, yeah, you could probably win a few more games and put yourself into that conversation, which I think we'll get to later on in the show, of an AFC East crown instead of just sneaking in as a final wild card spot. I mean, this team was 8-3 at one point, and then obviously had that winless December, sent them back down where they had to then get themselves into the playoffs in Week 18 with a very ugly win against the Jets, an 11-6 game. But you mentioned that they're likely not to find a starter in this draft with that second-round pick, but they could potentially, if, let's say, it is a Gibbs, or maybe even if they don't go running back with that first selection in the second round, and it's like an A-chain later, someone else, if you use it in the third round. Because as much as I love the Mostert-Wilson combination, even Mike McDaniel said it, sometimes they didn't run the ball as much despite the impressive yards per carry average because of some of the injury circumstances that they had going into those games and managing their workload. So if you bring in a young 21-year-old like Gibbs, then that could be your starting back, your leader in carries, and then the other guys sort of work themselves in. And that would really be a three-horse backfield if you do end up going that route, because all of them have to get their share. Wilson obviously being the power back in that circumstance, but they could find a starter at running back, or a tight end may not be a starter over Durham Smythe immediately, but it could be a vital piece in a two tight end set, a key red zone target. The Dolphins are obviously missing that after Mike Gesicki walked in free agency. We know he didn't fit very well into the offense, but in the red zone was where he was being most productive, catching touchdowns despite his low snap counts. An offensive lineman, we all know they'll probably address that, could very easily get set into a starting role with how off-injured Teron Armstead and Austin Jackson are, who are indeed going to be the starting left tackle and right tackle. Chris Greer last week noting that Jackson was being deemed the starting right tackle. So, you're not looking at a starter on the depth chart per se, the way you look at it right now, but any of these players, if you in the second, third round, day two selections, could easily get thrown into some of those types of roles.
Yeah, and look, you want your day two selections to be key players, rotational players with an eye toward being a starter. And on the offensive line, when you talk about Chris Greer, he did say that he likes the work that Robert Hunt is doing there at guard, and that they want to keep him there. So for those who thought that moving Robert Hunt out to right tackle was an option, from what Chris Greer said last week, that's not an option. That's not something that they're thinking about. You know what? And the Teron Armstead thing, I would really like to see a quality backup left tackle, just because you have to figure Teron is probably going to miss 4 or 5 games. And I'd have to go back and look at the number. I think he's missed an average of 5.5 games per season for the last 6 years. They got help for free agency on the interior with Dan Feeney from the Jets. He's a guard center, but I would still like to see a left tackle added there. And again, there at right tackle, you do have Austin Jackson and you do have Kendall Lamb. But I would like to see just. You know me, I like veterans. I want a veteran running back. I want a veteran backup quarterback. I want a veteran backup left tackle, because this is a team with they're trying to win now. I'm not sure that you have a whole lot of time to groom a rookie at such a youngster at such a key position that you can trust a youngster at left tackle, even though you have a right-handed quarterback and the right tackle protects his blind side. You're going to get a lot of quality pass rushers on that left side. And so that's why I favor a veteran. But I'll say this, the bottom line is the Dolphins have had a good offseason, and they've put themselves in position where we're having this discussion, where it's not, okay, you've got to draft a cornerback in the first round, right? Or you've got to get a safety, or you've got to get a left tackle, because they've had a successful offseason. To wrap this up, Furones, this offseason, I think the Dolphins are in better position right now because of their offseason, coming off of this playoff berth and ready to vault ahead than they were after their other two playoff berths, and after the 2008 playoff berth and after the 2016 playoff berth. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, no question. I mean, I'm thinking back now off the top of my head. The 2008 one, that was the Wildcat team. And then, Chad Pennington at quarterback. But obviously, I mean, not just the loaded roster talent across the board that you have with this year's team. And then 2016, also getting in as the number 6 seed. You could probably speak more to what the feeling was going into the following year from covering the team that season, but I think you kind of expected the team was sort of at very best in the same range, that they could maybe just sneak into the playoffs again, but not really make any noise, whereas this year's team, this franchise now has a vision of advancing further, of now really going for it. They're in this win-now mentality. They're trading draft picks for star players. I mean, these rosters, they don't even compare. Just when you think of it, across the board, like a Tyreek Hill on one side, you might have the best wide receiver combination, and you might have the best quarterback combination. Two very extremely valuable positions, not to mention everything else that this team has. So, I think they're far away ahead of what the 2017 team coming off the 16 berth and the 2009 team it would be coming off the 2008 berth, which was assisted by Tom Brady being injured for the season in week 1 that 2008 year as well. And the Patriots under Matt Castle still went 11-5, but missed the playoffs. But the Dolphins were also 11-5. And won the division, got the 3 seed, and really a full circle moment, beating Brett Favre and the Jets in Week 17 that year. And then now, 15 years later, the Jets have moved for another Green Bay Packers legendary quarterback. So Jordan Love on the 2038 Jets is going to be really something, huh?
That's right, exactly. Look at you bringing everything full circle, man. Hey, and here's something that we talked about last week: the Furones bonus. The Furones bonus question here, and so yes, it's back. So here's the bonus. When we talk about the off season and what the Dolphins might do in the draft, you wrote yesterday about the report of offensive tackle Cameron Fleming coming here for a visit. How could that affect the lineup, and what would that do toward looking for an offensive tackle in this draft in the second or third rounds?
Well, I don't think a move would be imminent, so it's not like now watch then something's announced and I'm proven wrong in minutes here. But I think they'll still draft the same way. It's probably a move that would come later on, but just a visit right now. But obviously a player now into his early 30s, a veteran with 60-plus starts under his belt in his NFL career, has been to 2 Super Bowls, won 2 Super Bowls going back to time with the New England Patriots, has experience with new Dolphins offensive line coach Butch Barry from playing with the Denver Broncos last year. So obviously some familiarity across the board here. And so maybe that's what you mentioned, the Byron Jones June 1st, post-June 1st money. Maybe that's something, an area where it's spent. But I don't see him being immersed into immediate starter competition. Now, might be, some training camp deals where, you mix him in, but I think Chris Greer said it very clearly just last week that he is going in with the anticipation that Austin Jackson is the starter at right tackle. So that might be your Brandon Shell replacement more so. And then if we have another injury to Austin Jackson, then Cameron Fleming would be an exceptional fill-in just to slide him right in. And I know he spent more time at right tackle. I'm not sure of his left tackle capabilities. But, obviously, if Teron Armstead goes down, then you need a capable backup there.
Again, I like what the Dolphins have done this offseason and the position that they put themselves in. I don't consider them Super Bowl favorites necessarily, but we're going to get into that later in the show. Let's migrate over to segment 2 and Tua Tagovailoa here. And, this is kind of older news right now. I'm not going to call it old news because people are going to flip off. So I'm just going to call it older news. But look, Tua admitted that he talked about retirement, kind of flirted with it. And so should there be concerns from the Dolphins that these thoughts might resurface if there's another concussion? It would only be natural for another thought to come to his head, right? I mean, he's had at least 2 concussions last year, right? We had the Cincinnati and we had the Green Bay, the Buffalo head trauma incident, we can call it, right? Maybe that was a concussion, maybe it wasn't. Then he had the one in college when he broke his nose. So that's at least 3 in 4 years, right? Maybe 4 in 4 years. So that's a big concern. And what I'm wondering here is, would another concussion to Tua, and I'm going to mix apples and oranges here. We know Victor Oladipo of the Miami Heat. He's had injury problems. He had the knee injury the other night. I'm sure that's very deflating, and he's probably thinking, oh, man, here we go again. If Tua gets another concussion, would it be like that? Or would it be even more serious where Tua is worried about, his future health and whether he can play with his kid and all that kind of stuff? I think all of that stuff is on the table. I think that the talk would probably come into Tua's mind, but especially mid-season, I think Tua is such a competitor that he wouldn't entertain the thought of, I'm retiring in October. And he would go back, he would play 100%, but would he quite be the same mentally? I don't know. And I think that's a legitimate question. I'm not questioning Tua's competitiveness at all. I'm questioning his view of his life as a husband and a father long term. And the fact that he already thought about that shows that it's in his mind. So what your thoughts, Furones? If he gets concussed again, do you think it would be like it was last year, or do you think it would be more serious, right, as far as his future?
Yeah, it might creep back into his head. I mean, he already did admit that was a thought last year, and obviously very dire circumstances. There were 2 in the same season, one of them where it was a very ugly scene on the field in Cincinnati. So considering he's already thought of it once, it might creep into his head. But I think more so initially when he's sitting out, because that is a tough time on a player when you can't really do anything for your team, and probably, with a concussion, maybe you start feeling like, man, I feel like I could go back out there, but then doctors are giving you the test and saying, no, you need to hold on a bit, you need to go through these protocols, and this last one, it was 37 days. Granted, that's after 2 diagnosed concussions within a few months, so it would be different circumstances if he faces a first one 8 or more months later once the next season comes around. But at the end of the day, like you said, he's such a competitor, and a lot of players play through much more of an extensive concussion history than even he has. It's just sort of the scenes that we have seen and the way he sort of last year became this media image of concussions in the NFL because, well, obviously he was at the forefront of it, so partially in good reason. But I think as long as what he's hearing from professionals is true and he's not more susceptible to concussions because of the recent ones or more vulnerable to CTE later on, and he'll probably have that itch to keep playing once he approaches clearance anyway. Maybe it'll be difficult when he initially is sitting out. Maybe has to sit out a couple weeks, but then once he approaches clearance, is going through those later phases of protocol and is back on the field, then I would imagine he has that itch and he's going to be right back to being that competitive player and quarterback that he wants to be.
Yeah, that's what I think. But the fact that he talked about it tells you that it's in his mind. So hopefully that doesn't even come up this year. But here's something that will come up, Furones, and we didn't ask Tua about this last week, and maybe it wasn't the right time, but strategically, is the quarterback scramble off the board? Is the quarterback draw off the board? And if so, does that limit the Dolphins strategically? Does that limit Mike McDaniel as a play caller? We know that Tua shouldn't be taking headshots. He shouldn't be lowering his helmet and going for first downs which we saw him do after that Cincinnati concussion. I believe it was one of the West Coast games, maybe the San Francisco game. But anyway, it didn't happen very often after that. And if I'm a defense, I'm probably looking at Tua. And if I'm an active pass rusher, I'm probably looking at Tua and saying, this guy, for his own health, is probably going to stay in the pocket. Now, he could surprise you, but strategically, Furones, does that put the Dolphins at a disadvantage?
Yeah, and I'm also wondering about that new quarterback helmet. If he will indeed try it out. I know a lot of players, and they like the routine, and they don't really want to start with something new. But hey, with all the measures that he is taking, with the jiu-jitsu lessons and strengthening his whole body with the expectation of being able to withstand these hits better and protect his head and neck area better, then yeah, I mean, that might be another measure to take. I know it definitely would have been a question to come up in last week's press conference if we had a little more time. It was kind of a pretty brief session, just 10 minutes long after such a long offseason and so much going on, so many storylines surrounding Tua. But that one didn't come up. I'm sure we'll get to it eventually, ask him about it. Maybe next time we talk to him later in OTAs, whether it's I hope it's not as long as training camp. But yeah, I mean, strategically, I think they want to keep him away from contact anyway on scrambles and have him slide more often. We've heard it so many times from Mike McDaniel, and Tua's always saying that he's being told that. So I think that's something that he needs to do regardless, and now even more so since he has been put out due to concussion twice, and then possibly that third one from that precedes the one in Cincinnati against Buffalo. So quarterback sneaks, I believe with the closer contact, it's not as much momentum as a full-on collision, as a scramble where maybe Tua's going close to full speed and has gone 5 yards, and then a safety's coming up, a big hitting safety's coming up full speed to hit him. So maybe different circumstances. I know in that Buffalo game week 3, then there was the whole back issue that he was playing up, that his body was twisted, and it was really when he had that QB sneak. And in the past, like Brian Flores had Jacoby Brissett go in specifically for quarterback sneaks in the 2021 season. So that wasn't really something that we saw last year with Teddy. So Mike McDaniel isn't following along that route, and I don't see it with either Mike White or Skylar Thompson or anything. So not something that it seems like is on the table right now. But yeah, I'm more so concerned about the scrambles when Tua has some momentum, a defender has some momentum coming at him too, and he's got to make sure he knows to slide in those circumstances.
Yeah, and look, McDaniel figured out not McDaniel figured out, but we saw the direct snap to Durham Smythe, right, on a goal line for a touchdown. Seemed like somebody else had one too, didn't they? It wasn't Alec Ingold.
I think, yeah, Alec Ingold just had one. Maybe, or at least he had a 1-yard touchdown of some sort. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they have kind of figured a way around that. So that's that's definitely a good thing there. So all right, Furones, let's get to the big topic here, and that's where the Dolphins are in the AFC, and can they improve their position in the AFC via the draft or via a post-draft acquisition? And we'll talk AFC and AFC East, right? So look, right now for me, in the AFC, I have the Dolphins no better than 4th, behind Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Buffalo. And I think that line between the Dolphins and Buffalo is razor thin. But you've also got Baltimore, you've got the Chargers, you've got Jacksonville, you've got the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, and Breece Hall will be coming back. They're nipping at their heels. What are your thoughts on where the Dolphins are in the AFC right now?
So you're sticking with the traditional 3 that we saw from last year at the top. And I mean, Buffalo, until proven otherwise, and I think you still have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But some changes going on there, but they are also getting their safety combination back. And DeMar Hamlin also might be able to play again. He's been cleared. But between Poyer and Hyde, that's huge on their defense to be getting those guys back. And that was sort of one of the low points to them is that their defense fell off a little bit. So, Yeah, Kansas City, obviously, they're sitting at the top of everything right now. And with Patrick Mahomes, he has proven that even when you take Tyreek Hill away from him, then he's still going to find a way, and he still has enough to go and make the Super Bowl run. And the Bengals, as Joe Burrow continues to ascend, it's very difficult. Now, the huge thing is just when matchups play out. Now, I don't know if a lot of people are giving the Dolphins enough credit, the odds makers, everything, for this Jalen Ramsey acquisition, because that could be a huge game changer in those matchups where now, when you match up against Stephon Diggs from Buffalo, Kansas City's deep receiving core, even if it doesn't have a Tyreek Hill anymore, the Bengals, of course. Now, when you have such a deep secondary that's might compete to be among the league's best, now you could really change games where you're always anticipating you might have to score in the 30s to beat these teams. Now, well, maybe your defense puts together a performance where you don't have to score that much, and you're able to hold an opponent down a little bit. So, and obviously you have to insert the Jets with Aaron Rodgers and improving their receiving core, Garrett Wilson already being there. So that could be a huge game changer in those matchups specifically, is being able to lock down opposing receivers. And that's sort of a wild card that could throw the Dolphins into that group if they are able to contain those offenses, those high-powered offenses.
Yeah, and look, when you talk about the wild card, I think the defense is going to be a primary weapon for the Dolphins. That this is a way that you can control games. This is a way that you can get the opponent to do what you want, because your defense should be able to take control and dictate games to the opposing offense on occasion. Definitely more often than you did last year. Last year, we saw the defense was capable of making some big plays, mostly at home. But, on the road, that defense was kind of a reactionary defense. The opposing offense would put something on them, and now it's like, can we patch this leak? Can we find a way to stop them? This year's defense, I think you can take it to those offenses. You've got good interior defensive line play, right, with Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer. You've got Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb on the edges. You've got Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey there. You've got Javon Holland back there. You've got Kader Kohou. Maybe Nick Needham comes back. Brandon Jones, Deshaun Elliott, Jerome Baker, David Wilson, and You've got some depth. You've got a defensive coordinator who knows how to call plays, who knows how to make the offense, or who knows how to take things away from an offense and make the offense adjust to you. I'm excited about this defense, Furones. You can tell I love what they've done with this defense, and I think having that edge, having that advantage. I think you can do a lot that you weren't able to do last season. You weren't able to do previous seasons. I think Brian Flores was kind of trying to work toward that as a defensive coach, but he neglected the offense. You go through all the offensive line coaches and you go through all the quarterbacks. I think you've got a better balance here. Let Mike McDaniel take charge of the offense. Vic Fangio, you're the head coach of the defense, and that dimension, I think it really, that's kind of why the Dolphins Buffalo, it's not just what we saw last season. And I think Josh Allen, he still has that propensity to, late in the game, he could win it, he could lose it. He keeps both teams in the game at the same time. With a better defense, maybe you flip Josh Allen over to more errors. I'm really excited what they can do with this defense. I think that's one of the reasons that I say that the line between them and Buffalo is razor thin, but you do still have Kansas City and Cincinnati up there. But again, to me, the bottom line for this Dolphins team, I really don't care what they do in the regular season as far as a record. I want to see them win a playoff game. And however you win the playoff game, if you're a 13-4 in the regular season and you win a playoff game, or if you're 9-8 in the regular season and you win a playoff game, to me, it's all about the postseason and how much progress you've made from the previous season. The defense, to me, can play a huge role in that.
Well, yeah, that's how this team will ultimately be tested, ultimately be viewed as what they do in the postseason, because then regardless of what they do in the regular season, then you're still going to hear about that age-old statistic that the Dolphins have not won a playoff game since 2000, even if even if they get the 1 seed and then they have a bye and they're hosting a divisional round game, but then lose that game, you're still going to hear about the stat that they haven't won a playoff game since 2000. And Perk, I hope you like this defense. I mean, you were a huge proponent of the defense last year, even through the lowest of the lows. So I would hope that given these improvements, you are at least more hopeful for this defense and an even bigger fan of this defense. But like you mentioned, I think at all levels, this defense is really set up to succeed. Wilkins and Sealer up front. Who knows what you could get from Emmanuel Ogbah? If you could get something closer to what you saw the last couple of years, as opposed to last year when he missed some time, and then also just wasn't himself when he was available. Raekwon Davis is on a contract year like Wilkins and Sealer at the moment. Maybe an extension can be worked out with one or both of them, but you always know that's a huge motivating factor for players. So maybe you get something more out of Raekwon Davis, who looked really fit in the picture the Dolphins posted of him showing up for the first day of offseason workout program. So that seems encouraging as well. And then linebacker position, bringing in a David Long to go with Jerome Baker. So 2 athletic, versatile linebackers on the inside who have the edge rushers with Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, and the ability to mix and match, bringing in Andrew Van Ginkel if someone needs a breather, bringing in a Malik Reed who has previously had some of his best years under Vic Fangio on the back end between Howard and Jalen Ramsey, and then also now having options between, you could work in either a Nick Needham or a Cater Co who in the slot, and then the safety opposite, Javon Holland. If Brandon Jones is having a bounce-back season after his knee injury, or you brought in a Deshaun Elliott as well, you also have some depth, so one injury doesn't completely throw your defense awry. And then just a scheme as well. More zone coverages could help Xavier Howard in that he doesn't have to run with the receiver as much in press man coverage, and maybe he could get his eyes on the quarterback more, be that ball hawk that we know him to be with a 10 interception season a few years back, and another one where he led the league with 7. The most interceptions of any defender since he was drafted in 2016. So maybe bring a little bit of that back, especially if Ramsey is locking down someone else on the other side and the team is trying to avoid Ramsey, as opposed to in past years where it might have been trying to avoid Howard at times. So opportunities for him, and I think Fangio will find out how to bring it all together.
And let's talk AFC East here, Furones. And man, now that Aaron Rodgers is in this division, and I saw you tweet out, the Jets-Dolphins rivalry is back. That's the same thing Dave Hyde tweeted out after Aaron went on the Pat McAfee show and said whatever he said. My intention is to play for the Jets, or whatever it was that he said. I can't remember the quote, however he phrased it. But
I just remember he told off Adam Schefter.
Right.
He revealed that text message he had with him.
Lose my number.
Nice try, or whatever it was.
Right, exactly.
And then he left Diana Rossini on red.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, this division is already making news since the offseason. Where are the Dolphins? And really, we're going to ask where they are in relation to the Jets, because we talked about the Buffalo thing. I think that they're slightly behind Buffalo, but gaining ground, right? They scored the 29 points in the December game, 31 points in the wild card game. So they are getting a good game from Tua in that December game. What was that, 32-29? I think it was, or so whatever that final score was. I don't remember. Anyway, tell me about what you think about Dolphins and Jets. Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, the running back who had a really good performance against the Dolphins last year, was having a good rookie year till he went out. Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, where is this? And they split their games last year also. The Jets beating them 40-17, I believe, up there in New York. So that was a game where Teddy Bridgewater had to stumble. He lasted one play. But where do you see the Dolphins in the AFC East right now?
Yeah, let's not forget for that game, the Dolphins had Tua for 0 plays and had Teddy Bridgewater for 1 play. And then it was Skylar Thompson the rest of the way, making his regular season debut at that point, right? So obviously a tough environment for him to go into. But Now the odds makers are going crazy with bringing the Jets up ahead of the Dolphins, and of course the national narrative will be that the Jets now with Aaron Rodgers have emerged. And they're putting them in the conversation with Buffalo, and I feel like the Dolphins are kind of being ignored in all this, and they might be the team closer. I would put the Dolphins ahead of the Jets still, especially with that Jalen Ramsey acquisition. It is so huge. It's so immense to what it does, how it changes opponents' game plans. And I think nationally that's kind of being overlooked. And the Dolphins are almost being given similar odds, expectations to maybe what they would be before the Jalen Ramsey move going into this season in a second year of this offense, bringing back Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and with the hope that Tua can remain healthy potentially, which is a huge if, yes, after everything we have seen. But if that does transpire, then yeah, I still see the Dolphins ahead of the Jets. And then I also have the Dolphins really close to Buffalo because we have seen them even last year, first year of this system. They were highly competitive 3 times against the Bills. It was one game where they actually did beat them in the scorching heat down here week 3, went up to Buffalo, and you thought they had no chance after what we had seen the previous 2 weeks in the snowstorm, that lake effect snow warning off of Lake Erie in Western New York. And they went in there. Jalen Phillips is going topless in warm-ups, and they played their game, and they hung in it until there was a last-second field goal where Buffalo won. And then even the playoff game with Skylar Thompson starting, the Dolphins were highly competitive, had a chance to win, had a lead late, and then had another drive or two where they could have won it. But then obviously we saw some of the clock mismanagement there going on. And then obviously it was going to be a tough task for Skylar Thompson, a rookie 7th-round draft pick in a first playoff game on the road like that, to go out there and win. So it ultimately didn't happen. But this team has been right there with the Bills, considering last year's squad, and I think they're going to be much better. So I think they already have some of the tools, some of what you need to go up and compete against Buffalo. So that's going to be, again, highly competitive. So I see, honestly, that as more of the debate than where the Dolphins are with the Jets. But all 3 is going to be extremely exciting. And never make the mistake of counting out the New England Patriots with Bill Belichick. I think he also did get some of that co-offensive coordinator stuff figured out in this offseason, so that won't be there. But I'm not all in on Mac Jones either, but still, Bill Belichick is always going to be something to deal with, so don't count them out as well. Really, the whole AFC East is going to be phenomenal football, so a lot of primetime games probably that we'll be covering.
Yeah. I mean, this is a beast of a division, right? And you can't ever count out the New England Patriots because, look, yeah, as you say, now they do have the offensive coordinator, and I'm not sold on Mac Jones either. But I think that Belichick is smart enough to know that I don't have the same system I can run under Tom Brady with Mac Jones. I need to be more of a defense and run game team, and to me, that's what they've been. It's been 3 seasons without Brady, or whatever it's been. So
21, 22.
Yeah, so I think that they've been smart enough to adjust and even made the playoffs. So I think that they're going to be a fact, even at the very least, that they're going to be a spoiler. There's somebody you're going to have to watch in December and January, even if they aren't the team that's making the playoff run.
And the Jets, there's still going to be some time needed to gain that chemistry. I mean, even you think back to the most similar comparison you can make would be Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers. And yeah, they won the Super Bowl that first year. The Jets defense is very good. I don't think they're as good as that Bucs defense, but it still took a lot of time that regular season to gain that offensive chemistry. So you didn't see it right away. You saw a lot of regular season games. That's why the Buccaneers did not win the division. They had to go through as a wild card, and the Saints won the division that year. Before then, Brady and them had it going in the postseason. But it's still going to take some time for the Jets. Don't think you just drop Aaron Rodgers into a situation and then all of a sudden he is automatically the Aaron Rodgers that was MVP with Devontae Adams in Green Bay.
Yeah, and look, we saw Aaron Rodgers late last season, and he had the thumb injury, so we'll see what he looks like with the Jets, and I agree with you, it is going to take a little time. Furones, when you talk about the Dolphins and where they rank in the AFC and AFC East, we know that there's still time to add players, right? I mean, most notably this week through the draft, which starts on Thursday. Dolphins' first pick is Friday night, pick number 51. They've got a second-round pick, no first-round pick. Are there moves that the Dolphins can make from now going forward that could really be a difference-making move? And to me, the biggest one would probably be a veteran running back, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry. We saw that the Titans said that they haven't received any trade calls for Derrick Henry. He's on the last year of his contract. Dalvin Cook, the hometown kid from Miami Central, has rushed for over 1,000 yards each of the last 4 years, and that Minnesota offensive line, that wasn't the best. So you have two good guys out there. Dalvin Cook, you'd have to do some renegotiating. I believe he has 3 years left on his deal. I think he's due 10.4, and Derrick Henry 10.5 or something like that. And I think Cook is a $14 million cap hit. Derrick Henry is like a $16 million cap hit. Those can be worked around. The thing here, as we've seen with the Dolphins, right, with Teron Armstead and Tyreek Hill and all of this contract readjustment that's going on this offseason, the question is, which one makes more sense between Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry, and are the Dolphins better off drafting a young running back that they don't have to pay that much money, that when you consider Mostert and Jeff Wilson on the one-year deals, that you can just kind of hand it off to them? I'm a Derrick Henry guy. I've been a Derrick Henry guy ever since he came out of college. When him and you could have paired him up with Ryan Tannehill, I thought that would have been absolutely huge for this team. And we saw that in Tennessee. Those two go to the AFC Championship. So even with all the wear and tear, I just love the idea of that hulking workhorse running back who you can hand it off to. It makes Tua's life easier. It makes Mike McDaniel's life easier as a play caller. It gives you that option in short yardage goal line situations. And it makes that defensive coordinator think, well, do I want to play an 8-man front and stop Derrick Henry and take my chances on the outside with one-on-one with either Tyreek or Jalen Waddle? Or do we want to play that, kind of play back and the 7-man front and take the risk of being pounded into dust by Derrick Henry? I like that. But something tells me that Dalvin Cook is more realistic than Derrick Henry. Your thoughts on the situation? But make no mistake, I'm a Derrick Henry guy. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like the Dolphins have been linked more to Dalvin Cook, so that might be more Dolphins' interest to make that move, and either one would be a home run move as far as adding an elite running back, and probably when you talk about odds makers and win totals, then that probably would be the move that moves the needle the most. There's nothing else that would really indicate to odds makers, okay, well, this just puts them over the top. It's probably one of those running backs, especially just how big that'll play up nationally as well, and a lot of the odds are based on the perception of the bettors from the outside. So that's why even Jalen Ramsey addition was kind of more so overlooked than really probably what it should go for. So, yeah, I mean, I think Cook more so, but, man, I agree with you. When you think of you start thinking, fantasizing Derrick Henry, pounding opposing defenses, and you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle that the secondary has to account for, and they are not able to then get into the box and provide support against Derrick Henry, and you have to really pick your poison. Boy, that would be about as close to unstoppable if they had that. But, I mean, let's see how this draft plays out this week, because if you're the Dolphins at 51, and let's say the off chance that, it does play out where Jahmyr Gibbs is available or just falls to a spot where you don't have to move up that much and you could go snag him, then, boy, that's got to be really appealing for you to just get a guy from the ground floor, 21 years old, who can fit this offense. Maybe some concerns about pass blocking that can be worked on throughout the years. Eric Stoogsville can work with him and whatnot. But, Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry, a proven guy. Now, you won't maybe get as many years in it and at cheap as you could a rookie running back. But yeah, either one would be phenomenal, really, and really move the needle as far as expectations.
Yeah, I agree that those either of those would just be major acquisitions that, from perception and execution, man, that they would really move the needle. All right, Furones, so the draft, I'm thinking that the Dolphins stay at 51 as opposed to trading up or trading back. And you know, they've got second and third round picks, and so I'm thinking that they stay there at 51 and probably take the tight end, although I wouldn't be Sam Laporta from Iowa, that's who I think, but I wouldn't be surprised whoever they select. I would be shocked if they I would be shocked if they moved up. I would be shocked if they moved up. Moving back, I could kind of see that, but I think they stay at 51 with a tight end. Your thoughts as we wrap this edition of Dolphins Deep Dive up?
Yeah, I'll say much more likely stay at 51. You don't have much draft capital in this year's draft, so I don't know how much you want to dip into 2024 draft capital. That could prove very valuable later on. If you do find a trade deadline hole on the roster, or there is some key injury where you can use some of that 2024 capital, a first-round pick like they did with Bradley Chubb this past trade deadline, and then find a proven veteran, former Pro Bowler maybe, with one of those first-round picks, then yeah, that might be the route to go if you're thinking of trading one. If it's a small move, like just a few picks up within the second round, where one of your targets, be it a Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe it's a Darnell Washington, if one of those draft targets is available in the early 40s, going into the mid 40s maybe, and it doesn't cost you that much to move up, and maybe you just go from that, you send that 51 pick, and maybe it's like a third rounder next year or something, then why not? Or, well, their third rounder they forfeited as part of that Brady thing, but anything similar, anything comparable is my point. Then maybe you do make that, but Chris Greer mentioned the teams late in the later half of the first round inquiring. I think that's more so clearly it's them asking the Dolphins. I don't think the Dolphins would be that interested in that big of a move. They probably have their eyes set on some more realistic options where they are picking. And maybe even if some of the guys that they have high on their board are taken off, then you could trade down and acquire more capital because maybe you do want to go and get your tight end. I love the Sam Laporta pick. It seems very realistic to me as well. At 51, maybe you could get a lineman in the draft that you will look to develop, even if he's not a starter right away. But you can get into your system early on, especially if at least one between Liam Eichenberg at left guard, Austin Jackson at right tackle doesn't work out. And then you have that extra pick to then be able to maybe get those, maybe also get a running back. You probably need a defensive lineman with all those guys that we mentioned on the last year of their deals currently. I know they're working with Christian Wilkins on extension talks, but if either him or Jack Sealer doesn't pan out, or Raekwon Davis moves on at the end of next season, you still need a backup at nose tackle this season in its own right. So probably defensive line, looking toward the future as well, could be somewhere where the Dolphins look to go. And you probably want to address these before you get deep into that 6th and 7th round pick, where you kind of just want to maybe get a project, the best player available that you see at that point in the draft. So that day 2, Friday night, will be huge, which is now the same night, right, that the Heat would play Game 6 against the Bucks if Milwaukee staves us elimination at home in Game 5 on Wednesday. So a little bit of a dual South Florida big sports night going on there.
Yeah, that's gonna be divided attention among a lot of South Florida sports fans. Jimmy Butler, wow, last night, I mean, absolutely incredible. Yeah, that's
historic.
Yeah, go Heat, go baby! Up 3-1, a play-in team, in an 8 versus 1 situation, and they're up 3-1. What an incredible situation for the Heat, and look, let's hope the Dolphins are on that path, right, of some playoff success. They're building toward it. We will see what happens this week in the draft. Obviously, always a key toward building the franchise. Second and third round picks. Again, the Dolphins don't have a first round pick, but second and third round picks, they should be rotational players, contributors with an eye towards starting. So let's not just, poo-poo these picks. These guys should play some kind of key roles for the Dolphins this year and the next couple of years. So in the win now window, these guys should play some key roles. That's your boy Furones. I'm your boy Perk. We will see you here next week, sunsentinel.com, noon on Tuesday.